Communication is key to establishing yourself as a person of influence in your industry. It's generally also key and foundational to any human interactions and relations. According to the book, any engagement of communication has three parts to it. It has the speech, which is the message, the speaker, who is the messenger, and it has the audience, who is the receptor of this message. Effective communication therefore requires that detail or attention is given to these three parts of this triangle. Hi, my name is Joseph, and on this channel I simply share stuff I'm learning to level up my knowledge and application of that knowledge in fields like communication, personal finance, and other self-development topics. If you're into stuff like this, feel free to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. So let's get right into it. The first part of this triangle is the speech or the actual message. Let me tell you a story. Just after finishing high school, I got the opportunity to be a tutor at one of the local community schools around, and it was a privilege. I was really excited to share the knowledge that I had. So I was given a class, and the students at the time were really excited because they had somebody who is relative, almost their age, who would teach them these new things, who would help them understand some of these concepts and all that stuff. In the first session, I began teaching. I think I was teaching math or something like that. Yes, so I began teaching, and I had found ways to simplify some of these difficult concepts, difficult subjects, difficult topics. So once again, I was really excited to share this knowledge with the pupils, the students. I began sharing what I knew, and you could see the enlightenment on these students because they had probably never heard some of these difficult concepts broken down into smaller bits and smaller bites that they could understand easily and keep to memory. So kept on going with my session of teaching them, and I got carried away. Because I knew they kept on understanding, so I kept on sharing more knowledge. So it kept on going like that. Eventually, the math session turned into a physics session, which turned into chemistry session. I kept on going. The hour turned into 2 hours, and so on. You could see it in the face of the students. I'll call one of them John. You could see it in his eyes that he was saying,
I said, that's enough!
In this tutor-student interaction, I felt shy after that, but it taught me something. I broke one fundamental principle of any speaking engagement to limiting my subject. I kept on going and going and going on, even though the knowledge was alright, the students kept would be able to understand. But every speech, according to the book and according to my experience as well, every speaking engagement needs to have some form of a time limit. I'm sure we've all listened to a speaker who kept on rambling and kept on going, and you thought to yourself, this guy can't get a hint. We are tired. We've been doing this for quite some time. So hopefully after this video or after listening to this, as you hopefully practice, you will not be caught in this trap of going on and on. The book goes into more details about other tips that would make the actual speech more relevant to your audience and more effective. Some of them are that you need to speak with illustrations. You need to use stories. I think one of them that I had never heard before, I think I had seen with some of the speakers that I have listened to, is that you need to use names, pseudonym names in your stories, in your speech. If you use names, I think it's easier it gets the audience into your story, and they'll be able to picture names. If you can't say the actual names of the people in the story, you can use pseudonyms. The other tip that's on this point is to use dialogue in your stories. I think that's one thing I also need to really improve on. I have never really used dialogue in my talking and in my sharing information. When you use things like dialogue in your communication, it puts your audience in the situation that you're actually in, or that you're trying to interpret, or that you're trying to share The next side of this triangle is probably the most important, which is the audience. So the audience is key to any form of communication. The receptor of this message that you are sending is key. If the audience does not get the intended purpose of your message, effective communication has not taken place. In any engagement of communication, the audience is key. I hate him or love him, I think one of the masters I've seen at engagement with the audience is Trevor Noah. Unlike other comedians that I have seen who are able to appeal to only relatively smaller demographic of people, I've noticed Trevor Noah is able to relate with different kinds of audiences from different countries, and you'll see that the audience actually engages with him. One thing that I've noticed is that with Trevor, he's able to adapt his jokes or his speech in this case to different audiences by speaking in the audience's listening voice, so to say. So an example is when he came to our country a few years back. He used about the same kind of jokes, but he tailored them to our setting here. I think he did some research on what was in the thoughts of the people at the time and what was happening around, and he tailored his jokes to that. And the people who went there had a great laugh, and I think there was this thing where everybody was talking about him even after he left. And I see this in almost every other country he goes. If he goes to Canada, he'll tailor his talks to the Canadian audience. If he's speaking to an American audience, he'll tailor his talk to the American audience, and so on and so forth. This is key as well as we speak to our audience. Speak to your audiences. Speak in your audience's listening voice. So the book once again goes into different details on how to keep the audience as the center, as the apex of your speaking. I love something that I heard from Jordan Peterson, once again, like him or hate him, who says when he's speaking to an audience, he does not really speak to the audience, he speaks to individuals in that audience, and from those individuals he picks reactions that will tell him how to proceed with his talk.
Well, there's some techniques, let's say, is like if you're speaking in front of a group, you are not delivering a talk to a group. That's not what you're doing. The talk isn't a packaged thing that you present to a group. There isn't a group. There's a bunch of individuals, and you talk to them. So when I talk to a group, I always talk to people one at a time. And that makes it easier too, because you know how to talk to a person. It's like, can you talk to 1,000 people? Well, probably not, because it's too intimidating. But there isn't 1,000 people there. There's 1,000 individuals, and so you just look at an individual and you say something, and you can tell if they're engaged. They look confused, or they look interested, or they look angry, or they look bored, or maybe they're asleep, in which case you look at someone else.
If you enjoy content like this, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. The next part of this triangle is the speaker, and the book goes into some details, on how to be more effective as a speaker. By concentrating on your mindset, your body, and your voice. For your mindset, it goes into details of, once again, the speech, this engagement of communication not being about you as a speaker. I think it's so easy to get caught up. I think I still face this challenge, and I'm trying to constantly erase it from my mindset, so to say, and I'm constantly trying to improve on it. And that's the mindset of being caught up in a shell of, what if it's not good enough? What if I'm boring? What if, the list can go on and on and on and on. What if it's not making sense, and all those things. So the issue of being caught up in your own thoughts, and the book goes into details of sharing ways of not being stuck at this phase, and making sure your concentration is on the audience, on your audience, on making sure that they are the center or not you. The next part is the body itself. There's a stat from one of the famous psychologists in the US, between 50 to even about 90% of communication being body language, non-verbal communication, which is really, really important. So making sure that your body is engaged in your communication is key to delivering the message that you have. The book goes into some details also about your voice, which is your instrument of sharing what you have to say. There are details in that as well. The effectiveness of something like your voice will show in how you are enthusiastic or in how you're earnest about your topic, the topic that you are sharing. I know this stuff is easier said than done, but with practice, I think it begins to become more natural and you become better at it. If you didn't watch the first part of breaking down this book, watch this video next, and it will share some fundamental truths about improving your communication. See you in the next video.